Okay, Taz, we're live. We're live on Facebook and we're live on YouTube. This is Pink Hair, Pink Head with me, Phil Crowshaw, and Taz Thornton. I probably shouldn't have played that because that showed you with all your hair all nice and neat.
I just looked at that and thought, that's what my hair used to be like. Mind you, I looked at that compared to now and thought, oh my God, I look like a pinhead.
Yeah,
no
well,
offense,
just don't,
Phil, no offense.
Yeah, don't take the P, right?
Don't take the P.
At least I'm a brown pinhead now.
I know. Good man.
Be on the bright side.
Said earlier, I won't. If I catch the first sun tin, which I'm going to have a funny zigzag fringe line when it gets cut.
Yeah, I don't talk about fringes. That's a nostalgic conversation for me. Lovely to be on the show again. It's been a little while, but it was well overdue, wasn't it?
It was indeed.
Some yatter and chatter going.
Yeah.
And we thought we'd go live this time because we've threatened it before, but we thought, no, we'll go live this time.
Because we're a bit rebellious like that.
A bit rebellious, yes.
Yeah.
What is it they say? You're live on Channel 4. Do not swear.
No. They say you're on Channel 4. Swear. BBC is your live. Don't swear. Right. Okay. Channel 4 and ITV are like swear. Go on, Taz. Give us a swear word.
Brilliant. Okay. Well, what we've decided to talk about today is this word disruption, basically, particularly because I've always been a big fan of disruption, as you know, in terms of probably the excitement it creates, the very idea of disrupting markets and the very idea of doing things new and different. As you know, it's always floated my boat and we've known each other a long time. And it's particularly relevant now, of course, because of everything that's happened in the last few months, which we don't no need to go on about it. I think most people are pretty familiar with what's been going on in the last few months. In terms of, I thought we'd talk about the downs because I know you're positive, but we need to talk about the downs and the ups as well, and then maybe some of the opportunities that it creates for us as well. So just starting with some of the downs, one of the downs I think at the start, and obviously it's getting a bit clearer now for some of us, and some people have been much more impacted than others, as we were talking about before we came on air. But in terms of the downs, all of a sudden everything became very uncertain, didn't it?
Yeah.
So I think uncertainty is something that people have really struggled with. Maybe small businesses a little bit less in a weird kind of way because we live with uncertainty. It's part of our life.
Yeah.
What's your thoughts on? What about your clients and yourselves? Have you come across that?
Yeah, I think you're right. And it was interesting. Before we went on air this morning, I was thinking back to the last one of these we did, which was just before lockdown, when we were both pretty much going, just like a flu. What we're panicking for? And then as we put that episode live, oops.
Yeah.
So it just shows that's where our optimism can sometimes shoot us in the foot a bit. But there has been a lot of panic. The biggest issue I've seen with small businesses and uncertainty, and I think the uncertainty has floored a lot of small businesses. The small businesses that have crashed in this are the ones who either have been sticking their head in the sand, pulling an ostrich over going online, or they've not been able to find a way to convert to online, or they haven't been able to adapt quickly enough. For me, because so much of all my one-to-one work immediately went online, so no problem. The biggest issue for me in terms of the uncertainty was reorganizing some of the live events, because to be fair, from an income point of view, some of those live events represent, if you look at it in percentage terms, some of the biggest chunks of my income through the year. But that's where I learned the importance of having a good contract, and how pleased I was that I didn't pull out that clause that said, if we need to rearrange, we've got a year's grace to do it, blah, blah, blah. Because at the time when I was doing that contract,
there's no point in putting that in.
This pushes it onto 2 sheets a day. 4, shall we knock that out? And something went, no, leave it in. So I've been really lucky there. but
or smart. Some people
oh,
might argue.
smart. Yeah, smart. Actually, yeah, keep that look shit in your pocket. It's smarts. Something in there told me to keep that in. And
Yeah.
most of the people on those events have been brilliant. It's my heart of speaking event that I've had to postpone, and that will now happen in August rather than April. And I think off the back of that, I had one person who broke contract, but even in this current locked down world, somebody very quickly bought that place. So people are still buying high ticket event places in a climate like this. The biggest issue I found with uncertainty was people panicking. And it wasn't so much the people who genuinely were flat broke and wondering how they were going to keep a roof over their heads. It was the ones who were going, oh, well, we don't know how long this is going to last. Let me see if I can just tighten things up a little bit, tighten my belt a few notches. Who can I get out of paying? And I think that created a bit of an issue. And that's why I went so big and strong on telling people that we all needed to, instead of knee-jerk cancelling things, we needed to talk to our providers. If we were genuinely in a position of need, okay, how can we both take a bit of a hit and create a manageable dip, rather than just knee-jerk cancel that plunges us into a really deep and needless recession?
Yeah, absolutely. I actually had a podcast client, quite a big podcast client, and they'd booked me to do some podcasting recordings for them, and they obviously postponed it when it hit the fan, but they paid me. And you know what? I was so grateful. I was just impressed, because they probably didn't need to, if the truth be known.
I had the same with one of mine.
You know, I'm fortunate. I'm not desperate for the money, and I kind of know that some people are a bit more desperate, which I fully appreciate and respect.
We've been there. We can remember what it was like.
Oh, exactly, 100%. And I think for me it was, but for me now, when lockdown ends or we get to a better state of affairs, I know for a fact that I'm going to go all out to do the best job I can for them, and probably will go the extra mile. I won't be sticking in invoices for editing or whatever.
Or bits and bobs. I had the same with one of mine. When the lockdown first hit, 3 of my biggest paying clients did knee-jerk cancellations. But one of them, rather than cancelling, she was coming up to the end of a 6-month coaching program, which we couldn't extend, but the minimum you can take is 6 months. And rather than just cancel, she just said, look, my head's not in the game. I'm going to have to really pare back with homeschooling. So I will pay you for these next 2 months, but can we postpone them to go further ahead? And that's great. So same thing. I got the payments still coming in. And then she came back and actually said, could she come back, but onto a lesser program until things pick up? So I think when you treat people right, it's such a cliche, but when you're good with people, then they'll tend to reward you for that, and vice versa. I will certainly remember those who have been good with me through this, and those who did a knee-jerk, I'm just going to break contract and stop paying you. And that only happened with 2. The other 2 went, and they'll be on their 6 months. One said she wants to come back. One's already come back, but then 2 people proper dropped me in it and broke contract. And I'll remember who they are, and I just won't work with them again. It's that simple.
Yeah, no, absolutely. I mean, we do a lot more bigger live event stuff now through some strategic partnerships, particularly with a great company called Captive North in Manchester. And, we've been kind of, obviously, you imagine a lot of live stuff, back of the room, 100, 300, 700, thousands of people. We've had a couple of festivals actually that have been cancelled, but they've come to us, and rather than saying, sorry, it's cancelled, they've come to us and said, well, actually, what can we do online? And that's the fascinating from my end, video, audio, as you know, Geeky Media has been heavily involved in that over the years now. And it's just amazing. They're all looking for creativity, which is, I'm at my happiest when I'm in creative mode, as you well know. What can we do? How can we use the technology rather than we'll just forget about it, furlough everybody and all crawl under a stone? And I think that virtual event stuff has really gone crazy, hasn't it?
It has, but that raises a really interesting point, because I know a lot of events have started to go virtual. But I think there's a difference. I mean, I've been doing an awful lot of foresights and presentations for online business networking groups to keep myself out there and keep myself visible, because you can imagine a lot of my face-to-face speaking gigs have been put on ice, and that's great. And when you're speaking to for a business group or for a networking event, something like that, you don't expect pain. But I think where we've got to be really careful, particularly with the speaking industry and the speaking profession, events profession now, is people perceiving there's not a value in the speaker when it goes online. So what I would put out there
very
to
interesting.
what I put that out there to events
Yeah.
companies now is, if you are going to move your events online, you are effectively saving money on your venue. You might decide in the climate that you're going to bring your ticket prices down a bit, okay, but you are still going to save more than you lose. And in that case, are you either going to pay your speakers if you were expecting them to just come for the audience before, or are you going to pay them a little bit more than you were? Because let's play fair here, it's still somebody giving their time. So I think we need to be really careful about that. I know there are some people I've seen in similar arenas to us whose business has been decimated because they've put too many eggs in their speaking and live event basket and not enough in online stuff, and they're through the floor. We haven't been through the floor because we've adapted. But when it comes to those speaking gigs where we still want to do them and where people want to go online, let's have a think. If you can save money on your venues, that's brilliant. But don't try and save money on your speakers and on the people who are actually putting the effort into coming to your events. And without those speakers, you wouldn't have an event. So let's think about that too.
Yeah, there's a huge psychology and perception in that, isn't there?
Massive.
It's not real. It's not real. The same advice, the same guidance, the same insights, the same inspiration is flowing out, but because it's online and people see the internet as free. In perception terms,
or do they? Because let's look at this in another way. I'm fully booked with coaching clients. I just took on a new client yesterday, and I was able to juggle, I think, 4 options throughout the whole of June. Otherwise, she'd be into July and beyond. That's how solidly booked I am. I haven't reduced my coaching fees, and I'm busier than ever. I did widen my budget program so that I'd normally open that to 6 people a year, and I opened that and took more people on in that. And I did open a program where I said, if you wanted something deeper and you couldn't quite get to that at the moment because of the situation, then talk to me about partial discount or deferred payments or installment plans, things like that. But I haven't actually discounted anything that I'm doing apart from those Taz of somebody might come and say, I've got 500 quid I can manage, Taz, how far can we make it stretch? But I haven't gone into my programs and slashed the price because they're all online, because I'm giving the same value and the same time. Think about it. Outside of this lockdown situation, I didn't charge less money for a client I was servicing in, say, New Zealand than somebody was going to go and meet in the back offices of Nero. Back offices, that means my little coffee booth.
Yeah, actually, we've met a few times in the back offices of Nero, haven't we? Back in the day.
We should be getting commission from Nero, really.
Yeah.
So that's, if we're not discounting the face-to-face delivery that we're doing online, the one-to-one work, why should anything else be worth less? Why should it? You can factor in things like, okay, well, I don't have overheads, so I can factor that in a bit. But outside of that, why do we value stuff less online? Or is it that we've got lots of event organizers and lots of the big white teeth gurus out there putting so much shit out for free online to try and boost their mailing lists that people are wary of it?
Yeah, absolutely. Do you know, actually, we not only have we got a few viewers, which is quite amazing, seeing as I was totally useless at promoting it, which is my fault. We've actually got here Nathan Newman saying hello, both.
Hello, Nathan.
And Nathan is a friend and associate of mine. I probably wouldn't admit it in public like most people that he's a friend of mine, but yeah, great guy, very creative. And funnily enough, actually, just as an aside, we were both on a virtual escape room experience last night, which was amazing. Another friend of mine.
Looking at those.
Yeah, it's absolutely. Have a look on Facebook, and it's horror stuff, which I think you probably will enjoy. It's all very but it's really, really good. And but again, that's the reason I mentioned that, actually, apart from anything else, is that it's a great example of disruption and managing disruption, because escape rooms, of course, are shut. So they've gone, okay, how can we give the experience to people virtually? But I have to say, they've put so much work into making the experience. They've integrated video, they've integrated all sorts of sound effects, ethics and all sorts of things.
But isn't that the point? It's people who are willing to be creative and adapt, rather than those who are just go, well, this is going to ruin my business. You got to think, get out of panic mode. If you go into fear mode, you cannot be creative and in fear at the same time. So you got to, mindset in this is massive.
Crucial. And ironically, I suppose one of the other downsides, of course, is the financial turmoil that it can create for people. And I think there's this fight or flight thing going on, isn't there?
Yeah, absolutely.
It's almost, do I fight and bounce back and find ways to, I don't know, offer my coffee through a little window, maybe probably shouldn't say this, but maybe do a little bit on the edge, but beg for forgiveness without being silly, So
long as you can do it at Barnard Castle, I think.
Yeah, yeah. Do you know what? We're not going to do political. I'll tell you why, because that's another 7 hours of, and let's be honest, it's been done to flaming death, hasn't it?
Isn't it? Aren't we all sick of hearing about it now?
Oh, I am. The very words Dominic Cummings, I was like, oh, they're still at that. Let it go.
No, you see, I only did Barnard and
Castle. Let it go.
And you brought in Dominic now. Oh, let him go. Anyway, moving on. The interesting thing, you see, adaptability as well. I've got this going on a separate stream on a watch party, and we've got a load of comments and stuff coming in there too. What have we got? Louise Scargill is saying it's knee-jerk reactions. If people don't know where their income is coming from due to all of this, they're going to panic. Absolutely. We've got loads of people watching us on a watch party too. We should do lives more often, mate. Yeah,
I think we need to do it live from now on. We've been threatening it for ages, haven't we? And now's the time. The time has come. I think
we've given people enough warning now.
Yeah, and bearing in mind, I've just launched something called the Live Streamers Association. I suppose I need to walk the talk.
You ought to, really. And there's my Unleash Your Awesome live story events I used to run. So between us, we're being a bit daft by not doing it live, really.
Yeah, no, absolutely. If we can't do it, then nobody's got a chance, have they, really? So thanks, Bruce. Good to see you as well. Obviously, need glasses. I think you need to get Specsavers if you think I'm looking good at the moment. It's obviously noticed the tan, haven't you, Bruce?
Well, Bruce's hair looks better than mine in a minute.
Yeah, actually, I'm just jealous. Albeit, of course, it's the colour of his hair and his beard are a little bit different. But hey, is that a hate crime nowadays, by the way? Saying that?
Only if you say it.
yeah, that's true of everything, isn't it? Okay, so we've obviously got financial turmoil. What's your view? This is particularly pertinent from your point of view. Is the I don't even know if I can use this word anymore, but I'm going to say it in the way mental turmoil, the psychological turmoil that people are in, and I suppose that's again linked to that fight or flight. Do you fight or do you flight? Do you run for the hills and get under the duvet?
Well, it comes to right now, you get under the weighted blanket.
Yeah,
whoever weighted those is making a fast buck at the minute, I bet. It comes back to what I said a few moments ago. You can't be creative if you're in fear, and whether you're going to hide and carry or carry on depends on whether you want to have a business at the other side of this. What I am noticing is that where people have been allowed to work from home, and God, why has it taken something like this for us to start trusting our employees enough to let them to work from home and on their own hours? Crazy. But I'm finding a lot of people who've been in work and are now working from home are now realizing that they don't actually enjoy their jobs. So the other thing this is bringing up is people starting to consider their careers where before they felt quite safe. So there's all kinds of stuff going on now. Is this a bad time to start a business? I don't think it's any worse than any other time to start a business, to be honest. If you can make a business work in this, you can make one work at any time you like, really. So there are... do
you remember I did the interview with Simon Woodruff, who started Yo Sushi? If you remember, I did Simon, and he said that about businesses. He said it's like, he said there's never a good time to start a business, and he said it's a bit like there's never a good time to have kids. You kind of have to just grasp the nettle, but it should have given people time for reflection. And I had actually jotted down here that an opportunity, one of the ups side of it was about just being able to reflect and having a bit more time to reflect on our business model, and what I find fascinating as well is how you get on that hamster wheel
Hmm.
and you're going 100,000 miles an hour. And you're going out here, you're going out there, you're going out in the middle of the, even networking events now. I hate getting up really early. I'm not an early person. Guilty
well, you've
as
got to do your
charged.
hair and your makeup.
High platform shoes on so that I don't look like Dobby. I've got the whole kind of thing going, really. And now the idea of just turning up without my trousers on. By the way, I have got my trousers on today. That was a joke. Honest.
I'm saying nothing.
Yeah. But just, turning up 10, 15 minutes, get a shower, come down, do a bit of networking, have a drink of coffee while you're doing it, chat to a few people, get a few emails. I've had a couple of emails off people that I was interested in maybe talking to, and then you're done. And then you're on to the next thing. And especially you can imagine living where I do in Manchester, it's like you're setting off and you're thinking, right, okay, well, if I give myself an hour and a half for an half an hour journey, I might make it. I mean, for crying out loud, absolutely unbelievable.
Yeah.
I mean, these are the sorts of comments that I get.
Phil's hair needs its own Twitter account.
I mean, the lack of respect is just disgraceful, Nathan.
Phil, don't worry, mate. Just call him on apostrophes and you'll be fine.
Yeah. Hey, Nathan, don't. Yeah. Let's show that again. Do not do that sort of thing in front of a renowned journalist. No,
you don't need an apostrophe in that it's, Nathan. You're doing Phil's. The Phil's one is good, but not in that it's.
So anyway, yeah. You see, he doesn't know you're an exceptional journalist as well as everything else.
Now.
Yeah, absolutely. So so it's forced people to stop. What do you think about the situation now that a lot of people obviously have been on furlough? A lot of people have been enjoying the sunshine. Amazing as it might seem. Now people listening in from around the world. Yes, this is the UK and it's been sunny for some weeks, driest May ever. And I've got to know the kids again, got to know their partners again, had a little bit of quality time. Ate a meal at the table together.
Fancy that.
My assumption is there's going to be very significant numbers of people that dread the idea of going back to what was the normal.
Yeah, I think there are. I think there's an interesting point there as well, in that so many people are assuming that so many people have had so much time. And particularly for those of us who are self-employed, who've been able to think on their feet and adapt, I found myself busier than ever. In fact, the 2 weeks preceding this, I was supposed to be in Greece. And apart from one day, because I couldn't squeeze all my clients in, I kept those 2 weeks free because I'd recognised that in taking on so many new clients who needed help through this, I wasn't keeping enough time for myself. And I could feel myself starting to go into burnout a little bit. So I think there's a twofold thing here. Is A, if you're self-employed, you may well be busier than ever now. So don't assume that everybody has loads of time. But for those who have been furloughed, you're going to really start thinking now about your options. Do you want to go back? Do you love that work as much as you thought you did? Do you want to do something else? But there's a fine line there, isn't there, between, is it that I don't enjoy my work and I want to do something else? Or is it that I've just really enjoyed this bubble? Because sooner or later that bubble's going to burst. And if it's not to do with your job and you leap and then find that you're not enjoying anything, you just enjoyed the sunshine bubble, then you got to think carefully before making a permanent decision from a temporary situation.
Yeah, that does make sense, actually. Well, certainly the weather bubble's going to burst on Wednesday. I think it's due to start raining up here.
I'll tell you the other interesting thing with people who've been on furlough, depending on the layout of the office now, is how many businesses are going to be in trouble bringing people back and trying to get everybody in whilst observing the 2 meter safety rules. I do wonder how many businesses will actually be forced into a situation where if people can't work from home, they're going to have to let people go simply because they cannot create the space they need to stay within regulations. That's another thing that people won't be thinking about.
Yeah, and it's a real quandary. And obviously there's always massive politics in these situations. It's inevitable. But at the same time, I think if we're honest about it, who would envy any government having the responsibility for managing this lot?
No, God, no. I don't think. I was talking to my mum about this a few nights, but we got a bit heated. But but I was saying that this actually has nothing to do with politics now, in terms of, you know, which is your team. This has to do with, could they have done things better? Yes. Could they have done things worse? Yes. Is it even worth going on about it, or do we just make do with what we've got and make the best of it? Yes. So I'm not sure that any other government would have made a better job of things, which doesn't mean that I'm a big fan of this one, but these are unprecedented times. I was reading an article last night that one of my clients, Kirsten Goodwin, posted. She's another amazing coach. And she shared an article from CNN about the way that Vietnam had handled the virus and the lockdown. And they've had a stupidly low number of cases because they started to react way back in January. And the seconds when they had their first 2 cases, which was a father and son who'd visited relatives in Wuhan, they immediately cancelled all the transport in and out of Wuhan, and then they locked down more and more and more. And they've had a handful of deaths and a handful of cases.
Well, I think Asia though had the warning with the MERS and SARS, didn't they?
They did.
That was so they'd kind of been there before. They knew a lot more about what they were dealing with. I think the West is.
It's very easy to start looking at how other people have done it now and say, this is how it should have been handled. Well, yes, in an ideal world, but also the Titanic sank. You can't do anything about that.
Yeah. And the truth is, you know, as I say, this isn't a political statement. It's just, I just think it's a truth. And that's that at the end of the day, whatever you think about the Dominic Cummings situation, and you've got befores and against, just like you did with Brexit and just like you did with the last election. The truth is that in a democracy, you're not going to have your say for another 4 years. And in another 4 years, if you want to say, you know, that Dominic Cummings thing was an absolute disgrace, Boris, you're out of here. That's when you're going to get your chance. So whittering on about it for weeks and weeks and weeks on end is kind of pointless. At this point.
There's 2 sides of this, and I think this is because of my past as a journalist. With my journalist hat on, if I was still a journalist, I would still be hanging on to this like a dog with a bone. And to an extent, I still am, but it's not to do with politics per se. It's to do with there being a very obvious disparity and the way that's been dealt with, particularly when you look at what had just happened in Scotland, and if you like, the precedent that had been set there. So I think with discussions like this, it's kind of impossible to talk about what's going on without touching on politics a little bit, because the government has brought in so much to either help or hinder, depending on your point of view. But with Cummings, I think we've got to be really careful to not just use it as a Tory bash. And if you are upset by it, and I was saying, do I think it was handled badly? Yes. Am I angry about it? No, because getting angry about things is a waste of energy. So you can have an opinion about something and be passionate about something without going into that zone of rah. And if you can have a really honest word with yourself, and whether it's Cummings or the horrendous situation where people have had to have funerals by iPads, and sometimes not even that, or not being able to hold your loved one's hands when they've been very ill or dying, it's all terrible. But if you can have a really honest word with yourself and recognize the difference between, this is something that is affecting me personally and I'm upset by it, and this is something that gives me another reason to walk around with a hammer looking for a Tory nail, or a Labour nail, whichever way you want to look at it, then that's the way to keep it sane and safe. We should be able to have discussions about things and debates without using them as an excuse to leap onto a bandwagon.
Well, in a sense, that's why I'm not on Twitter, because I think it's an angry megaphone for just about every son and a dog.
Now, that's interesting, isn't it? Because I found myself back on Twitter more during this and found it actually a really productive, useful place to be.
Yeah, we all have our preference. Yeah, I know. We all have.
You can't be there without being able to hold your own space and understand your intention behind things. That's what's so important. You've got to be ultra aware Why am I saying this? Why am I doing this? If I'm honest with myself, what is my intention? And if you can keep your intention clean and strong, then you can be Facebook, Twitter, Instagram, Snapchat, wherever you like, and it won't make a difference.
Yeah, no, absolutely. And of course, I've not got time for Twitter because I'm just dancing on TikTok most of the day.
Yeah,
at the
yeah.
moment.
See, I've gone back onto Twitter because of that Taz Talks Mental Health of Celebrities interview, because they all came through that, like the old Tweeting Times days.
Yeah,
So for
yeah.
things like that,
They're
it's
really good.
amazing. And of course, for businesses who want to generate media coverage, all your journalists hang out on Twitter. So again, if you use it properly and cleanly, it's a really powerful platform. But if you are going to get angry, then it's not that Twitter is an angry platform. Any feed on any platform is what you make it. If you engage in a lot of angry discussions and you follow people who like to debate and get angry a lot, it's going to be an angry place. If you follow lots of lovely people that you like to just have discussions about, and maybe clips about gardening, whatever floats your boat, it's going to be a lovely place. Life is always what you make it, especially on social media.
Well, you mentioned there about a few minutes ago about mindset. So the mindset for me of an entrepreneurial thinker is that you're on, you've got an ice cream van and you're selling ice creams, and suddenly there's an almighty downpour, and the whole, at 10 o'clock in the morning, the whole beach clouds over and it's raining. The entrepreneur's going, no, Mike, not, oh my God, the entrepreneur's going, where can I get some umbrellas from and sell them at a profit? Yeah. And I think there's a certain truth in that. So, I mean, one of the things I was going to ask you about as part of the discussion, and I'm conscious of time, but was the opportunities that we might be seeing now. And we've kind of touched on a few, but what do you think about new markets? Do you think there's anything that jumps out at you that is possibly a new market on the back of what we've seen and what's changed, apart from selling umbrellas on the beach?
Yeah. See, I wouldn't go and buy a load of umbrellas in that case. I'd look and see where's everybody gone to, and if they're all sitting under the covered area in a pub, I'd go and park opposite. That way you don't have to spend out on umbrellas, and you've still got your captive audience. But
that's a lot smarter than my idea.
I'd have to get really wet to find the umbrellas and leave my van unattended.
And if it's up here, it'll get nicked in 5 seconds.
Yeah, I've seen businesses adapting really differently to this. So, for instance, I can give a really good example. If you look at people on LinkedIn, I've seen some people who are in signage, who are usually putting together things like exhibition signage. And oh God, there are no exhibitions, there are no live events. People aren't going to businesses. Nobody needs my stuff anymore. I'm screwed. I've also seen other people going, right, everybody's on Zoom now. You don't want to keep using those electronic Zoom backgrounds that make your hair go all fuzzy. We can create you bespoke backgrounds for your wall. We can even give you material ones that fold down so you don't have to destroy your wallpaper. And then they've moved into, okay, so businesses are coming back in. They're going to need those social distancing signs. They're going to need branded screens. So I've seen there's one particular business I follow. I'm connected to on LinkedIn, who've done that brilliantly. But that for me is such a perfect example that on the face of it, signage companies, oh my God, this is the death knell. But flip it, that kind of thinking, genius. And they've done things like using their own space a lot. They've got a really exciting, creative kind of Google-esque with an edge decor to their space. So they've done lots of internal videos, which of course has got people going, oh, I want that in my place, or I want that, or I want that.
Yeah.
So there are absolutely opportunities in this. There are opportunities to flex, to adapt, to work with the opportunities that this presents, but you've got to be able to think differently. Way back at the beginning, I did some work with a therapist who did all kinds of different therapy modalities. And when we looked at it, the only one she couldn't actually do was massage. She did things like counselling and card readings and energy healing and crystal readings and stuff like that. She could do everything apart from massage via Zoom. And she'd gone into this space of, can't do massage, we've got to close down, I've got no money coming in. Hold on, what are all these other skill sets?
Yeah.
So there will be new opportunities coming up as well. I've seen people who usually produce stuff for gardens, adapting some of their mixes and turning them into bulk hand wash. That's where they'd normally be creating chemicals for your garden. Seeing them adapting that's worked really well.
Yeah.
I mean, there's all kinds, Phil, but we've got to be able to think outside of what we're used to. And I think that applies to going back out to this, into this as well, because do we want things to go back to normal, or do we want to look at everything this has given us, everything from cutting down pollution on the roads to, I don't know if you can hear the birds singing in my garden. Do we want to keep that, or do we want to just go back to the way we were operating before, which clearly wasn't working?
It absolutely wasn't. And I think the jury's out, because I've asked a few people what they think, and nobody's really sure. Nobody's really quite sure whether people will just a bit like an elastic band and just go stretch out and then go back to how they were, or whether it's been long enough to break the cycle. But it's what's going to happen is quite fascinating, and how people are going to react to it is quite fascinating too.
Yeah, it really is.
Yeah, but anyway, I think one of them. I'm going to finish with this, but it probably won't surprise you to know that I tend to have a bit of a philosophy in business of survival of the fittest, in a sense.
Oh yeah.
You know, and it's in a weird kind of way. It's almost like the natural order of things in the business world, isn't it? Yes. And I think I'm interested to get your views on it, but my view is that those that do adapt, those that understand the situation, or those that change strategies, those understand the whole principles of disruption and react to it, they will survive. And I hear a lot of people talking about what's fair and what isn't fair. And you know me as well as, if not better than anybody, and I struggle with that, because I don't think that life is not fair on many levels. And I think if you just accept the fact life isn't fair, because it isn't on so many levels.
And why should it be?
And why should it be? And then you're linked into entitlement then, of course, as well, which is another conversation we've had before. Yeah. So do you tend to view it in the same way, that it just will be almost like the laws of the jungle, and there'll be those that survive and those that don't?
To an extent, I think for some businesses, I mean, if you think about, I don't know, the construction industry, for instance, it's going to be much more difficult for them than somebody who can go completely online. So there's a caveat to it. There are some facets of industry where no matter how ingenious they get, operating in this climate has been nigh on impossible, without a doubt. But for the majority of people, I think this is, at the risk of sounding cruel, it is sorting the wheat from the chaff. And it's also, I think the next line down from that, though, is that if you have found that if your business does have the capability to adapt and go online, and you're still not managing to get the trade coming through, you're not getting enough to keep your head above water, then you need to have a really honest and open with yourself about why that is. I mean, before we went on air, you and I were talking about the amount of extra clients I've taken on through. I've taken on too many new clients through this, to be fair. I could do for a short burst, because some of them are really short-term contracts to get people through. But just through lockdown, not counting online clients, on top of my existing client base, I've taken on 17 new one-to-one clients. And again, that's only sustainable because a lot of them are in short bursts. That would not be sustainable long-term. Now, how can that be possible when essentially I'm a coach, and a lot of people see coaching as a luxury, and a lot of people see coaching as expensive, and a lot of people think coaching is just a rip-off? Why am I able to do that? It's because I've been consistent, because I've continued to show up, because I keep things absolutely real. I don't do these American squeeze pages with something that appears to be free, and then there's 11 to 12 offers to click through before you get to your crap free ebook, and then a gazillion and one crap emails forevermore. I don't do any of that shit.
And I've not seen you lying on the bonnet of a Lamborghini either recently.
No, I thought about lying on the bonnet of my Mini, but honestly, it's covered in bird shit where it's been static, and I don't want to get that off my cheap bloody jersey shorts, you know.
Right, we're going to have to finish it there, but that's an interesting one from Nathan again here. That the next pandemic will be one of poor mental health.
I think we're already in that. I don't think that's the next one. I think that's the current one, and I think we need to be looking at that far more seriously than we do. I think we need to look at the way we talk about mental health, and I think we need to look at that entire umbrella, because I think one of the barriers to people talking about mental health is the sheer fact that it covers everything from mild anxiety right through to psychosis. So somebody just struggling to get out of bed without hitting snooze isn't going to want to say they have a mental health issue, when people sometimes say mental health and immediately picture, I don't know, Mad Martha in Prisoner Cell Block H or something. So I think we need to look at what we're doing there. We need to look at the descriptors, and we need to treat it with far more compassion, empathy, care, and understanding than we are now.
Yeah, absolutely agree. Right. Okay. I think that'll do us for this show. First of the lives. I think probably there's good news and bad news, really, isn't there? There's good news that we'll be doing a lot more of these.
I think so.
And the bad news is, if you hate us, there's going to be a lot more of these. So it's kind of like it's good or bad news. But the great thing is, you don't have to click on them, do you?
But the good news for us, Phil, is that if we're getting to the point where people hate us, we're doing something right. You know, people talk about the Marmite effect as being a bad thing, but as I've said before, I wouldn't mind being 50p behind Marmite in terms of profit, would you?
No, not at all. Right. Okay, then, Taz. What we'll say then is until next time.
Yeah.
And I'm sure we'll get together again, and we'll have to think of something to talk about, because once coronavirus is over, Brexit's all out of the way, the election's all done and dusted, blimey, everybody's going to be bored out of their head, aren't they?
No, it just means we'll be actually avoiding politics for a while.
It does, yeah. And actually, it is a good time to go now, because my Amazon's arrived, which actually just sums everything up, doesn't it?
It does. So, it does.
Great to see you, mate. And look after yourself, and I'll talk to you very, very soon.
See you soon. Take care.
Bye-bye.
Bye-bye.